Picture this scenario, because I would bet good money you've lived it recently, maybe even this very morning. You wake up, you roll over, you grab your phone off the nightstand, and before your feet have even touched the floor, you are completely and utterly drowning.
Oh yeah, drowning in options.
Exactly. You are overwhelmed by an endless scrolling barrage of urgent emails, Slack notifications demanding immediate attention, and half-finished projects waiting for you at the office. And, I mean, let's not even talk about that towering pile of books on your nightstand that you keep swearing you're going to get to one of these days.
Oh, the guilt pile. We all have it.
Right. You're basically running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, the incline keeps getting steeper, but you aren't actually getting anywhere. But then, we all know that one person. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yep, the high achiever.
The one who seems to effortlessly glide through their day. They have the exact same 24 hours that you do, the same limitations of physics and time, but they somehow get vastly more done. And honestly, the most infuriating part, they leave the office at 5 o'clock with a genuine smile on their face.
Totally unbothered.
Totally unbothered. So what is their secret? I mean, how are they experiencing time so differently than the rest of us?
Well, it really is the ultimate modern dilemma, right? We live in an era where we are absolutely drowning in information, yet we are completely starving for execution. And the secret that high achiever possesses, the one leaving at 5 o'clock, well, it isn't a magical time-bending device.
Right, they aren't superhuman.
Exactly. What they have is a very specific, ruthless, and deliberate operating system for how they interact with their priorities. They don't actually manage time, they manage themselves.
Yeah. And that operating system is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're looking at a classic, a genuine international bestseller that has fundamentally shifted how millions of people approach their work and their lives. The book is Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastinating and Get More Done in Less Time.
Such a great title.
It really is. But we're doing something a bit different today. We aren't just going to skim the surface. We aren't going to give you a quick, hollow list of productivity hacks that you'll just, forget by tomorrow.
No, absolutely not.
We are taking you on a comprehensive audiobook-style narrative journey through this entire philosophy. We are going to start at the absolute highest level of overarching life management and drill all the way down to the daily, minute-by-minute tactical execution of your most stressful tasks.
Right, because the mission for this deep dive is to shortcut your path to becoming incredibly well-informed and, honestly, practically unstoppable in your productivity. We are taking all 21 of Tracy's principles and synthesizing them into a continuous, flowing masterclass.
A masterclass in getting things done.
Exactly. Our goal is that by the time you finish listening to this, you will have a complete bulletproof framework for conquering procrastination, prioritizing your highest value tasks, and ultimately taking back total control of your time.
So we have to start with the title, right? Because it is impossible to ignore. Eat That Frog. It sounds bizarre. I mean, it sounds a little gross, honestly. Where in the world does this come from, and why are we talking about amphibians?
Yeah, the phrase stems from an old saying, which is often attributed to Mark Twain. The underlying wisdom basically suggests that if the very first thing you do each morning is eat a live frog, you can go through the rest of your day with the profound satisfaction of knowing that it's probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you all day long.
That makes perfect sense.
Right. Brian Tracy takes that visceral image and uses it as the foundational metaphor for his entire philosophy of work.
So the frog is the worst task.
Your frog is your biggest, most important task. It is the one specific item on your to-do list that you are most likely to procrastinate on if you don't do something about it immediately. But the crucial caveat here, the thing that makes it a frog and not just a nuisance, is that it's also the one task that carries the greatest positive impact on your life and your results at that very moment.
Okay, so it's the massive needle mover. It's the thing that actually changes the trajectory of your career or your week, but it's also the thing you are terrified of.
Precisely. And Tracy lays out 2 definitive rules of frog eating that govern this entire system. Rule number 1, if you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first.
Wait, meaning if I have 2 incredibly important, intimidating tasks sitting on my desk, I can't just pick the one that looks slightly more palatable?
Nope. You must discipline yourself to start with the biggest, hardest, and most important task first. The human brain is naturally wired to seek the path of least resistance. You will feel an overwhelming temptation to start with the easier of the 2 important tasks.
Oh, absolutely. I do that all the time.
We all do. But you have to actively override that instinct. And that brings us to rule number 2. If you have to eat a live frog at all, it doesn't pay to sit and look at it for very long.
I have to say, that second rule is the one that really hits home for me. I always compare looking at the frog to standing on the edge of a freezing cold swimming pool. You are standing there in your swimsuit, your toes are on the concrete, and you are already shivering just looking at the water.
The dread is so real.
It is. You know it's going to be an absolute shock to your system. And the longer you stand there staring at the water, the harder it is to actually jump in. The anticipation of the cold is, psychologically speaking, actually worse than the cold itself.
Oh, 100%.
If you just dive in, you get that temporary shock, but then your body adjusts, the water feels fine, and suddenly you are just swimming. You're doing it.
That analogy captures the exact psychological barrier Tracy is identifying. The anticipation is what breeds the procrastination. The dread takes up more mental energy than the task itself.
It's exhausting.
It really is. To overcome that dread, the test lays the groundwork for everything else we are going to discuss today. Tracy argues that overcoming procrastination isn't some innate personality trait you are simply born with. It isn't a genetic lottery. It's a highly learnable physical and mental skill.
A learnable skill. That's encouraging.
Very. And acquiring this skill requires what he categorizes as the 3 Ds: decision, discipline, and determination.
But let me pause you there, because discipline and determination, they kind of sound like those generic motivational poster words. How does he actually define them in a way that is actionable?
Well, he defines them sequentially. First, you have to make a firm decision to develop the habit of task completion. It has to be a conscious choice. You have to look at your current state of overwhelm and actively decide you want to change your operating system.
Okay, so it starts with a choice.
Yes. Second, you need the discipline to practice the principles we are about to discuss over and over again until they become automatic. You don't try them once on a Tuesday and give up.
Right, consistency.
Exactly. And third, you need the determination to lock the habit in. You back everything you do with relentless determination until this action-oriented mindset becomes a permanent part of your subconscious. We are essentially talking about neuroplasticity, building a completely new mental muscle through forced repetition.
Okay, so we have made the decision. We are committing to building the discipline. But here's the immediate problem I ran into. You cannot eat a frog if you don't know what a frog looks like.
That's a very fair point.
You can't just dive into the pool if you are running around the backyard blindfolded and don't know where the pool is. So before we can even begin to talk about daily task management or checking off boxes, we have to zoom way out. We have to look at the architecture of action itself.
We absolutely need to define the ultimate targets. And this brings us to the first major conceptual pillar in the text, which Tracy calls setting the table. He points out that a massive, often overlooked reason for procrastination and a sheer lack of motivation is vagueness.
Vagueness, just a general sense of blurriness.
Yeah, it's confusion and fuzzy-mindedness about what exactly you are trying to do, in what specific order, and for what actual reason. If your goals are blurry, your actions will inherently be hesitant.
Because you just aren't sure.
Right. You will procrastinate simply because your brain doesn't know what the very next physical action is supposed to be.
Fuzzy-mindedness. I think that perfectly describes that terrible feeling of sitting down at a computer screen, knowing abstractly that you have a massive amount of work to do, but feeling completely paralyzed. You just stare at the cursor blinking because you don't know what the exact mission is for that hour.
Oh, I've been there so many times. But the cure for that paralysis is simple but profound. The rule for success here is think on paper.
Think on paper, okay.
The text cites a truly staggering statistic. Only about 3% of adults have clear, written goals. But those 3% accomplish 5 to 10 times as much as their peers of equal or even better education and ability.
Wow. I would struggle with stats like that. 5 to 10 times as much.
Yeah.
Just by the physical act of writing it down. How does pen and ink magically multiply productivity?
Well, it isn't magic, it's cognitive crystallization. When you keep goals in your head, they are just ethereal wishes competing with what you want for lunch and your anxiety about a cart repair.
Right, it's just noise.
Exactly. The text offers a powerful formula for setting and achieving goals, claiming that applying even a fraction of this process can double your productivity. It begins with deciding exactly what you want. You either decide for yourself or you sit down with your boss and discuss your objectives until you are crystal clear about what is expected of you.
But let's look at why that is actually incredibly difficult in practice. Deciding exactly what you want sounds great in a vacuum, but in a real corporate environment, the target is always moving.
Yeah.
Tuesday's priority is suddenly obsolete by Thursday.
Oh, absolutely. The landscape shifts constantly.
Isn't it amazing how many people work incredibly hard, putting in 60-hour weeks, sweating over the details, doing things very well that objectively shouldn't be done at all?
Yes, it happens all the time.
It makes me think of Stephen Covey, who is referenced in the source material. He has that brilliant analogy that if the ladder isn't leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster.
That is the exact danger Tracy is warning against. One of the very worst uses of human time is to do something exceptionally well that need not be done at all.
Yeah, that's such a powerful point.
Efficiency is completely useless without effectiveness, which is why the subsequent action is so critical. You must write it down. When you write a goal down on paper, you crystallize it, you give it a tangible, physical form. You can look at it and ask, is this the right wall?
An unwritten goal is just a fantasy. It has no kinetic energy behind it.
And to give it that kinetic energy, the text insists on setting a deadline. And if it's a massive year-long goal, you set sub-deadlines.
Because a goal without a deadline has no urgency. It has no real beginning or end. Without a forcing function, human nature defaults to comfort, right? The gas expands to fill the space provided. If you have no deadline, you will naturally procrastinate.
Absolutely. So you have the goal, you have the deadline, but that still doesn't tell you what to do at 9 a.m. on a Monday.
Right, that's the missing piece.
The translation to daily action requires making a comprehensive list of everything you can possibly think of that you're going to have to do to achieve that goal. It's a complete brain dump. You don't judge the items, you just get them out of your fuzzy mind and onto the paper.
Okay, just purge it all.
Exactly. And as you think of new things over time, you add them to the list. This gives you a visual boundary of the larger task.
But a brain dump is just chaotic data. To make it actionable, you have to organize that list into a plan. You have to arrange it by priority, like what is the most important element, and by sequence, what has to be done first before the second thing can happen. You are turning a messy cloud of anxieties into a linear, step-by-step roadmap.
And once that roadmap exists, the mandate is immediate execution. The source material emphasizes this brilliantly. An average plan vigorously executed is far better than a brilliant plan on which nothing is done.
Execution is the only thing that actually alters reality.
You have to resolve to do something every single day that moves you toward your major goal, no matter how small.
It's about preserving momentum. If you build it into your daily schedule, like reading 10 pages of research, making 3 prospecting calls, drafting 1 paragraph of the proposal, you never miss a day. It is the physics of inertia. An object in motion stays in motion. Once you start moving, the energy required to keep moving is vastly less than the energy required to start from a dead stop.
Which transitions us perfectly from the macro to the micro. The overarching goals are set. The table is officially set. Now we need to translate that architecture down to the scale of a single 24-hour day.
And this is where the text introduces the 10-90 rule. It asserts that the first 10% of the time you spend planning and organizing your work before you begin will save you as much as 90% of the time in getting the job done once you actually start.
It is the ultimate leverage of time. If you take 10 minutes to plan your day, you mathematically save up to 90 minutes of wasted effort, distraction, and the friction of trying to figure out what to do next. The most actionable piece of advice here is to write your daily to-do list the night before.
I have to admit, I always resist doing that because by the end of the day, my brain is fried. The last thing I want to do before logging off is think about tomorrow's work.
Oh, I totally get that. It is uncomfortable in the moment, but the psychological payoff is massive. When you plan your day the night before, your subconscious mind actually works on those plans while you sleep.
Wait, really? Just while you sleep?
Yeah. You will often wake up with intuitive insights or creative solutions to the problems on that list. But more practically, when you have a list waiting for you before the day even begins, you don't have to spend your peak, highly caffeinated morning energy figuring out what your priorities are.
You bypass the decision fatigue entirely.
Exactly. You sit down and you just start executing.
And it naturally breaks the elephant down. You know, the old cliche, had to eat an elephant. But let's avoid the cliche and look at the reality. A massive corporate merger project feels impossible to a human brain. It triggers a fight-or-flight stress response.
It's just too big.
Right. But a list of 20 small, chronological, mundane tasks like email legal for the NDA template, well, that feels totally safe and doable. As you cross those micro-tasks off, you generate positive forward momentum. You trigger dopamine releases that literally make you feel more powerful and in control.
But we have to address the major friction point here. Let's say you've done all of this. You've set your life goals. You've written down your massive brain dump to-do list for the day. Everything is out of your head and on the paper. You sit down at your desk with your coffee, you look at that paper, and suddenly you feel even more paralyzed than when you started.
Because the list is horrifyingly long. You stare at it and think, I would need an 8-day week just to get through what I have scheduled for Tuesday. Everything looks urgent. Everything looks like a frog.
And this is where the philosophy has to shift from the architecture of action to the mathematics of time. When everything feels urgent, nothing is. To survive this overwhelm, you need an objective, cold, mathematical framework for prioritizing. We have to introduce the 80-20 rule, famously known as the Pareto principle.
Named after Vilfredo Pareto, the Italian economist.
Yes. In 1895, Pareto noticed that people in his society naturally divided into what he called the vital few, the top 20% in terms of money, land, and influence, and the trivial many, the bottom 80%. But the genius of his discovery was that this ratio applies to virtually all economic and human activity. 20% of your activities will account for 80% of your results. 20% of your customers will account for 80% of your sales. 20% of your products account for 80% of your profits.
So let's apply that directly to the terrifying to-do list we were just talking about. If I have a list of 10 tasks to do today, the Pareto principle dictates that 2 of those items will turn out to be worth much more than the other 8 items put together.
Precisely. The value is not distributed evenly. And here is the trap that Tracy warns us about, the cognitive illusion that ruins productivity. Each of those 10 tasks might take the exact same amount of time to accomplish.
Oh, that is the core of the deception. It takes me exactly 1 hour to have a casual catch-up coffee meeting with a colleague, and it takes me exactly 1 hour to draft the executive summary for the proposal that could land my company's biggest client of the decade. The time expenditure is identical.
But the value delta is astronomical.
Exactly. And human nature, our lazy, comfort-seeking, energy-conserving brains, makes us want to cross off the easy things first. We crave the quick, cheap hit of dopamine that comes from checking a box, any box.
So true.
So we subconsciously procrastinate on the vital few, the true frogs, and we busy ourselves with the trivial many, the tadpoles. You can spend your entire day frantically clearing out your inbox, organizing your digital files, having those coffee chats, and at 5 p.m. you are physically exhausted. You feel like you worked hard.
But if you look objectively at the needle, you realize you haven't actually accomplished anything of lasting value.
So how do we break that illusion? I mean, if my brain is constantly tricking me into thinking that checking emails is just as valuable as writing the proposal, how do I force myself to see that difference?
To combat this, Tracy argues we have to look at the mathematics of consequences. He brings in some truly fascinating longitudinal research from Dr. Edward Banfield of Harvard University. Dr. Banfield spent over 50 years studying upward social and economic mobility in America.
50 years, wow.
Yeah. He wanted to isolate the single variable that predicted success more accurately than anything else.
And let me guess, it wasn't family background, it wasn't Ivy League education, and it wasn't raw IQ.
It was none of those. Banfield concluded that a long-time perspective is the single most accurate predictor of upward mobility and success.
A long-time perspective. Let's really pull that apart. What does that mean in the context of a Tuesday morning at the office?
It means that your intended future determines your present action. Highly successful people evaluate an activity in the present moment by projecting its potential consequences far into the future.
Oh, I see.
By definition, something that is truly important has long-term potential consequences. Something that is unimportant has few or zero long-term potential consequences.
That completely reframes the idea of eating the frog. It isn't just about finding the hardest task. It means looking at your list of 10 items and asking a ruthless question. Which of these tasks, if I complete it exceptionally well today or if I completely fail to do it, will have biggest noticeable impact on my life or my career a year from now?
Exactly.
The proposal draft has massive consequences. If I nail it, I get promoted. If I bomb it, we lose the client. The coffee chat, zero consequences. A year from now, neither of us will even remember we had that coffee.
And recognizing the stark reality of those consequences brings us face to face with one of the most sobering concepts in the text, the law of forced efficiency.
Sounds intense.
It is a harsh truth, but ultimately it is a liberating one. The law states there is never enough time to do everything, but there is always enough time to do the most important thing.
Let me stop you right there, because that is the exact opposite of how corporate culture conditions us to think. We are conditioned to believe that if we just hustle harder, If we optimize our morning routine, if we drink enough matcha, we can eventually get to inbox 0 and finish every project.
The math says otherwise. You cannot eat every tadpole and frog in the pond. It is mathematically impossible to get caught up on everything. The sheer volume of information and demands coming at a modern worker exceeds human capacity.
That is actually, well, it's incredibly relieving to hear. I think you really need to internalize this. You're never going to get caught up.
Yeah.
Ever.
Nope.
Stop trying. Stop feeling guilty about it. The goal of productivity isn't to do everything. The goal is to consistently do the right things.
To help you identify what those right things are amidst the chaos, the text presents 3 ultimate litmus test questions. If you are ever feeling lost in the weeds of your day, you stop and ask yourself these 3 things. The first is, what are my highest value activities?
Okay. What drives the most value?
Right. You have to think this through objectively. Ask your boss, ask your coworkers, look at your job description. What are the biggest frogs that make the greatest financial or strategic contribution to your organization?
The second question is a concept adapted from management guru Peter Drucker, and I think it is the most clarifying question in the whole book. What can I, and only I, do that, if done well, will make a real difference?
It forces you to look at your unique utility.
Exactly. I mean, if we take that a step further, it forces you to stop hiding behind busy work. If you are the senior graphic designer and you are spending 2 hours formatting an Excel spreadsheet that an intern could do, you are robbing the company of your unique value.
You really are.
That spreadsheet is not something that only you can do, but designing the core brand identity. If you don't do it, no one else is going to step in and do it at your level of expertise.
And that leads directly to the third question. What is the most valuable use of my time right now? Not tomorrow, not next week, not in the abstract. In this exact hour, with the energy levels I currently have and the resources in front of me, what is the single most valuable action I could take?
So let's play this out. You answer those 3 questions honestly. You look at your master list, and suddenly a horrifying realization hits you.
Yeah, the realization that most of it doesn't matter.
Exactly. If you apply the Banfield time perspective and the Drucker question of unique value, you will realize that a massive percentage of the items on your daily to-do list are practically worthless. They don't move the needle. They have 0 long-term consequences. And this leads us to what is undoubtedly the most controversial, but also the most liberating concept in this entire philosophy, the art of strategic neglect. You have explicit permission to ignore things.
It feels radical, especially for high achievers who have built their entire identities around trying to please everyone and flawlessly execute every request.
It's so hard to let go.
But Tracy introduces the practice of creative procrastination. He argues that since you mathematically cannot do everything, you must deliberately and consciously choose what you're going to procrastinate on.
I struggle with the phrasing there. We usually think of procrastination as a dirty word. It's a failure of willpower. It's watching Netflix when you should be studying. It's a character flaw.
That is unconscious procrastination. That is putting off the big, hard things by default because you are avoiding pain. Creative procrastination is entirely different. It is an act of strategic self-defense.
Self-defense, I like that.
It's the act of thoughtfully and analytically deciding upon the exact things you are not going to do right now or perhaps ever. You are consciously, aggressively putting off the low-value activities. You are actively starving the tadpole so you have the time and energy to eat the frogs.
And this introduces a brilliant piece of terminology from the text, posteriorities. We all know about priorities. A priority is what you do more of and sooner. But a posteriority is what you do less of and later, if at all.
It is the law of physics applied to a finite calendar. 2 objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Getting a new high-value task into your day inherently requires getting an old, low-value task out.
Picking something up means you have to put something else down.
Exactly. If you want to take on a frog, you must aggressively set posteriorities. You have to say no early, and you have to say it often, to anything that does not pass the 3-question litmus test.
But the emotional friction there is immense. How do you actually identify what to say no to without feeling like you are dropping the ball or letting your team down?
Tracy suggests a brutal but necessary mental exercise called zero-based thinking. You look at your life, your daily habits, your recurring meetings, your ongoing projects, and you ask yourself one question. If I were not doing this already, knowing what I now know about its actual value and cost, would I start doing it again today?
Oh, that is devastating. If you apply that to corporate life, it's a bloodbath. Think about that weekly hour-long status meeting that involves 8 people, where nothing is ever decided and everyone is just quietly answering emails under the table.
We all know that meeting.
If you weren't already forced to go to that meeting, knowing what you know now about how useless it is, would you voluntarily create that meeting today?
The answer is almost always no. We keep doing so many things simply out of historical momentum or institutional habit.
Right.
But if you look at a task or an obligation and realize, knowing what I know now, I would never volunteer to start doing this, then that task is a prime candidate for immediate abandonment.
Which perfectly sets up the mechanical sorting system. We need a way to filter our list daily so we can see the frogs, the tadpoles, and the things we are abandoning. The source gives us the ABCDE method. This is how you physically mark up your brain dump list before you start your day.
It is a categorization system designed to strip away the emotional weight of tasks and judge them purely on consequences. An A task is defined as something that is very important. This is a task that you absolutely must do. This is a frog.
Okay, the A tasks are the frogs.
Yes. The defining characteristic of an A task is that if you don't do it, or if you do it poorly, there are serious positive or negative consequences.
And if you have more than one A task, which most of us do, you prioritize them numerically, right? Like A1, A2, A3. Your A1 task is your biggest, ugliest, most consequential frog. That is the one you eat first.
Then you move to the B tasks. A B task is a tadpole. It is something you should do. But it only has mild consequences whether you do it or not.
Give me an example of the difference, because I think people easily confuse A and B tasks.
An A task is writing the final code for a software launch that happens tomorrow. A B task is returning a non-urgent phone call from a vendor or reviewing a routine departmental email. Someone might be slightly unhappy or inconvenienced if you don't do a B task, but the company won't collapse.
Right. It's nowhere near as important as an A task.
And the golden rule of this entire method, the thing that separates the high achievers from the people drowning in overwhelm, is this: you never ever do a B task when an A task is left undone. You do not allow yourself the comfort of petting the tadpole when the terrifying frog is sitting right there on your plate.
Petting the tadpole, I love that. Moving down the hierarchy, a C task is something that would be nice to do, but for which there are no consequences at all, zero, whether you do it or not.
Like going out for a long lunch with a coworker, calling a friend to chat during work hours, organizing your pen drawer.
Oh, the pen drawer. It might feel good, but it has absolutely zero effect on your professional output.
Then we get to D. D stands for delegate, and the rule here is ruthless. You should delegate everything that someone else can do. The goal is to free up as much of your finite time as possible for the A tasks that only you can do.
And finally, E stands for eliminate. These are the tasks we identified using zero-based thinking, things you do out of habit that make no real difference.
The harsh reality is that every single minute spent on an E task is time stolen from an A task. You must ruthlessly eliminate them.
Okay, let's pause and consolidate where we are. I've done the brain dump. I have applied the ABCDE method. I have my list. I have my A1 task clearly circled in red ink. I know exactly what my frog is. I know what I'm creatively procrastinating on. I am perfectly organized. But, and this is the million-dollar problem, I am still staring at the list. I am still standing on the edge of the freezing pool.
Still shivering.
I know exactly what to do, yet I'm suddenly compelled to go clean the kitchen or check the news. Why? Because, as the text explores in a really profound way in Part 4, knowing what to do is not the same as being able to execute it. There is usually a hidden roadblock.
Yeah, an internal or external choke point standing in the way of execution. Identifying that choke point requires a level of deep, often uncomfortable self-analysis. Tracy suggests we start by narrowing our focus onto what he calls key result areas.
Okay, key result areas.
He asks you to pose that ultimate career question to yourself again, but with brutal honesty. Why am I on the payroll? What specific, measurable results have you been hired to accomplish?
He introduces the concept of the big three. And we can use a fascinating psychological trick called the quick list method to find them.
I love this method.
Right. If I give you exactly 30 seconds to write down your 3 most important goals in your job right now, your subconscious mind bypasses all the corporate jargon and goes into hyperdrive. Your truest priorities pop out. And almost universally, when applied to any profession, there are 3 core tasks that contain 90% of the actual value you contribute to your organization.
The source illustrates this dynamic beautifully with the case study about a woman named Cynthia. Cynthia attended one of Tracy's seminars, and she was the archetype of the modern, overwhelmed worker.
Just totally drowning.
Exactly. She was a senior executive working 10 to 12-hour days, feeling completely burnt out, drowning in meetings and paperwork, and severely neglecting her family. Tracy challenged her to step back and identify her big three, the three key tasks that actually move the needle for her company.
So she goes back, she does the analysis, she looked at all the B and C and E tasks she was letting consume her time, and she realizes that out of the dozens of things she does frantically every day, only 3 really matter to her boss and the bottom line. So she makes a radical, terrifying shift. She applies strategic neglect.
A huge leap of faith.
Absolutely.
Ew.
She stops doing the peripheral stuff. She delegates the D tasks. She focuses almost entirely on those 3 key result areas. And what is the outcome?
Within months, her output in those vital areas skyrocketed so much that she doubled her income.
Doubled it.
But more importantly, the psychological toll vanished. Because she was no longer wasting hours of her day, context switching, and grinding through low-value tasks, she stopped working 12-hour days. She was able to confidently leave the office at 5 p.m. and spend her evenings and weekends entirely present with her family.
That story highlights a massive paradox in our working culture. We are conditioned to think that working harder, bleeding for the company, and logging more hours is the answer to success.
Hustle culture.
Right. But working ruthlessly hard on the right things is what actually guarantees work-life balance. It is the only way you get your time back. The ancient Greeks said, moderation in all things. You absolutely need balance in your life, but you only earn that balance by being brutally mathematically efficient while you are at work.
But the complication there is this. What if you know your key result area, you know exactly what your A1 task is, but you still can't bring yourself to start?
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
The text points out a psychological reality that most people don't want to admit. A major hidden reason for procrastination is a subconscious feeling of inadequacy. If you feel weak, unpracticed, or deficient in a specific area of a task, your brain will naturally try to protect your ego by avoiding the task altogether.
That is painfully true. If my A1 task requires building a highly complex financial model in Excel, and I secretly know I am terrible at Excel, I am going to find a million justifiable reasons to reorganize my desk, answer emails, or schedule a meeting instead of opening that software. I am avoiding the feeling of incompetence.
The only viable solution to that specific choke point is to upgrade your key skills. You must learn what you need to learn. The better you become at the technical mechanics of eating a particular type of frog, the more likely you are to just plunge in and get it done.
The friction just disappears.
Exactly. Therefore, continuous, aggressive learning is not a luxury. It is mandatory for high productivity.
And this ties directly into the concept of identifying your key constraints. You have to ask yourself, what is the limiting factor? What exactly is setting the speed at which you achieve your goals? If you want to double your income, why aren't you there already? What is holding you back?
Here we apply the 80-20 rule again, but this time to the concept of constraints. And the statistic is deeply humbling.
Let's hear it.
80% of the constraints that are holding you back from your goals are internal. They are entirely within you. Your personal habits, your lack of specific skills, your fear of failure, your fuzzy-mindedness. Only 20% of the constraints are external factors like the macroeconomic climate, your boss, or your competitors.
Wow, that really puts it on you. The analogy I love for this is highway traffic. Imagine a massive, modern 5-lane highway. Traffic is flowing beautifully at 70 miles per hour. But suddenly, a few miles down the road, it all funnels down into a single, ancient 1-lane bridge.
No, that's a nightmare.
It doesn't matter how wide or perfectly paved the highway is before or after that bridge. That single 1-lane bridge dictates the speed of every single car on that road. In your career and in your daily workflow, you must find your 1-lane bridge. You have to identify your key internal constraint and focus all of your energy on widening it.
But the text offers a critical, almost existential warning here. You must strive for accuracy when identifying your constraint. If you are dishonest with yourself and identify the wrong constraint, you will spend all your energy solving the wrong problem.
That sounds expensive.
It is. Tracy tells a cautionary tale of a major corporation that was experiencing a terrifying decline in sales. Executive management looked at the problem and assumed the constraint was the sales force itself. They weren't hungry enough. They didn't know how to close. So the company spent an absolute fortune reorganizing management, bringing in consultants, and retraining all the salespeople.
But the sales didn't improve, did they?
No, the needle didn't move an inch. because the actual constraint, the true one-lane bridge, was that they were selling an outdated product at the wrong price point to the wrong demographic.
Oh.
They spent millions fixing a perfectly good stretch of highway while the bring was still broken miles down a road. You must accurately, brutally define the correct constraint before you try to alleviate it.
Okay, let's assume we've done the hard work. The strategy is set. We have our A1 task isolated. We've identified our internal constraints, and we are actively working to upgrade our skills. We are standing on the edge of the pool looking at the water. Now, as we move into part 5 of the philosophy, we have to explore the actual hacking of the execution. How do we trick our sophisticated, comfort-loving human brains into physically sitting down and doing the hard work?
It begins in the physical realm, with your environment. You must prepare thoroughly before you begin. Clear your desk completely of everything except the A1 task. Gather every single piece of information, every file, every password, every digital tool you will need, and have them immediately at hand.
Just ready to go.
When you are fully prepared, you are like a cocked gun or an archer with an arrow pulled back, taut in the bow. The kinetic energy is stored. You just need one small mental push to release it.
Because if you don't do that, if you sit down to start the big project and realize you need to log into a portal, but you forgot the password, so you go to your email to reset it, and while you're there, you see 3 urgent emails from your boss, well, you are dead in the water. Your momentum is shattered. You have to have the environment sterile and ready.
Absolutely.
But the flip side of that is letting preparation turn into its own sneaky form of creative procrastination. You can spend 3 days researching and preparing without ever writing a word. To counter this, the text gives us the 80% rule. Do not wait for perfection. Get it 80% right, launch it, and then correct it later in the editing phase. Run it up the flagpole and see if anyone salutes. The magic is in the starting.
But how do you start a massive, intimidating, amorphous task? You take it one oil barrel at a time.
One oil barrel.
Yeah. The text references the psychological principle of crossing a massive, featureless desert like the Sahara. When the journey is hundreds of miles long and there are no landmarks, the human brain panics. It seems impossible. But the path across the desert was traditionally marked by black oil barrels placed exactly at the horizon line about 5 kilometers apart.
Okay.
Wherever you stood, you could see exactly 2 barrels, the one you just passed and the one you were walking toward. You don't have to visualize or comprehend the entire end of the desert. You only need to summon the energy to walk to the very next oil barrel.
As the old folksy saying goes, by the yard it's hard, but inch by inch, anything's a cinch. But let's get practical. How do we actually slice up a corporate task to make it an inch? How do you make a massive, terrifying frog look like a manageable appetizer?
Tracy offers 2 specific, highly effective psychological techniques. The first is the salami slice method. When you look at a whole roll of salami, you don't try to unhinge your jaw and eat it in one bite. You cut one thin, translucent slice. In practice, this means you write down every single microstep of the massive project, and you negotiate with yourself.
Negotiate.
You resolve to do just one single slice right now, and then you give yourself permission to stop.
It's the psychological trick of lowering the barrier to entry. Like, I'm not writing a 50-page annual report today. I'm absolutely not doing that. I am just writing the first 3 sentences of the introduction. That's it.
Exactly. The second technique is the Swiss cheese method. Instead of a slice, you resolve to punch a hole in the task, like a hole in a block of Swiss cheese. You commit to working on the project for a strict, incredibly short, specific time period, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes on a timer, and then you promise yourself you will stop and do something else.
I always laugh at these methods because when you articulate them, it sounds like you were negotiating with a stubborn toddler. Just 5 minutes of vegetables, I promise, and then you can have dessert. Why does this ridiculous trick actually work on highly educated adult brains?
It works because it leverages the fundamental science of human motivation. We have a deep psychological need wired into our neurobiology called the compulsion to closure.
The compulsion to closure.
The human brain loves to finish things. When we start and finish a task, even a tiny artificially constructed 5-minute piece of a task, it triggers the release of endorphins and dopamine in the brain. It is a literal neurochemical reward system.
That sense of completion, crossing off the subtask, makes us feel powerful. It's a high.
Yes, and that elation, that surge of chemical energy actually motivates you to want to do the next slice. You don't have to rely on willpower anymore. Momentum is chemically engineered in your brain simply by starting and finishing a tiny piece of the work. You trick the brain into building its own engine.
But there is a monster in the room. a monster that destroys momentum and hijacks that dopamine loop faster than anything else in human history, and we absolutely have to talk about it. Technology, our modern distraction machines. Emails, social media, Slack notifications buzzing every 3 seconds, pinging us with fake urgency.
The text is unambiguous on this front. Technology is a terrible, tyrannical master, but it is a wonderful servant. If you let it master you, if you allow your day to be dictated by the inbound demands of other people via technology, you will never, ever eat your frog.
No, you won't.
You will spend your life eating other people's tadpoles.
So what is the actionable step? Because I can't just throw my laptop in the ocean. The advice is to aggressively curate your inputs. Unsubscribe from unwanted newsletters. Shut off your desktop notifications. Do not let a red bubble or an audible ping dictate your attention. One executive in the book set up an autoresponder that basically said, I only check email twice a day at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. If it is a true emergency, call this specific phone number.
And you know what the reality was?
Let me guess. No emergencies.
Almost nothing was an actual emergency. The core problem technology exploits is the multitasking illusion. We genuinely believe we are being productive by rapidly jumping between our primary work, our inbox, and our team chat. We think we are doing 3 things at once.
But we aren't, are we?
Neurologically, multitasking is a myth. The brain cannot process 2 complex tasks simultaneously. What you are actually doing is rapid context switching.
Which sounds exhausting.
And every single time you switch contexts, your brain burns massive amounts of glucose, loses its flow state, and fatigues your decision-making centers. To double your productivity and protect your brain, the text suggests a specific rhythm.
The 90-15-90 rule.
Yes. You commit to working for 90 minutes, completely focused on your A1 task, with all distractions entirely severed. No phone, no email, no chat. Then you take a true 15-minute break to let your brain recover. Then another 90-minute focus block. Then, and only then, do you reward yourself with that hit of dopamine by checking your email or your messages. You dictate the sequence of events, not the algorithms.
I have to push back on that because the 90-15-90 rule sounds like a utopian dream in a modern open-plan office. If I go dark for 3 hours in my company, people will think I've died, or worse, that I'm not a team player. How do you actually implement that when the culture demands constant availability?
It requires managing expectations and setting boundaries, which is a frog in itself. You have to communicate with your team. Hey, from 9 to 10:30, I am doing deep work on the Q3 report. I will be offline, but I will respond to everything at 10:31.
Set the boundary.
If you communicate the boundary and then you deliver exceptional work because you had the focus to do so, the culture will adjust to respect your time. High performance forgives a lack of instant availability.
Okay, that brings us to the ultimate crucible. We've discussed how to prepare. We've hacked our brains to take the first bite of the frog. We've fought off the technological distractions. Now, in part 6, the final push, we must discuss how to finish. Because starting is great, it feels good. But the final separator between high achievers and average workers is the relentless, grinding drive to push through the messy middle to the very end.
This requires consciously creating large chunks of time. Most really important work, the true A1 tasks, require unbroken focus. You have to treat your time with the same respect you treat your money. You schedule work appointments with yourself on your calendar, and you defend them as fiercely as you would a meeting with your CEO. Furthermore, you have to capitalize on what the text beautifully calls gifts of time.
I love this concept, gifts of time. It's those weird liminal spaces in our lives, like when you're on a long airplane flight. For most people, that's an excuse to watch 3 bad movies. But if you view it as a gift of time, you are stuck in a seat, you can turn the Wi-Fi off, nobody can tap you on the shoulder, well, you can create an office in the air.
It's prime working time.
You can genuinely get more deep, consequential work done in a 3-hour flight than in 3 days at the bustling office, simply because the environment forces 0 interruptions.
Utilizing those chunks of time helps you develop a pervasive sense of urgency. If you study high performers, their most outward observable quality is this continuous action orientation. They have a distinct tempo. They don't rush frantically, but they power through enormous amounts of work smoothly and continuously, while average workers are socializing at the water cooler, checking social media, or agonizing over how to start.
But how do you manufacture that urgency internally if your boss isn't actively breathing down your neck?
The text presents a brilliant, anxiety-inducing thought experiment that I try to use when I'm slacking off. Imagine you just received an emergency message. You have an absolute crisis, and you have to leave town tomorrow morning for an entire month. with zero access to your work, your phone, or your email.
Oh, that's intense.
What is the one single thing you would make absolutely sure you got done before you got on that plane tomorrow? Whatever your answer to that question is, stop whatever you are doing and go do that task right now. Successful people artificially put this pressure on themselves. They create their own urgency. Unsuccessful people wait for external deadlines or for other people to apply the pressure for them, which always leads to stress and subpar work.
And this leads us to the grand finale, the apex of the entire philosophy. Principle 21, single handle every task.
Single handling is the ultimate discipline. It dictates that once you begin your A1 task, you keep working at it relentlessly, without diversion or distraction, until it is 100% complete. You do not put it down. You literally keep repeating the mantra back to work to yourself whenever you feel the urge to check your phone or get up for coffee.
The necessity of this rule comes from the brutal physics of context switching. We touched on it earlier, but the text cites a stunning, terrifying statistic. Starting and stopping a task, picking it up, putting it down to check email, coming back to it an hour later, putting it down to go to a meeting, it can increase the total time it takes to complete that task by up to 500%.
500%. Let that sink in. A task that should take 1 hour of deep focus can consume your entire day.
Because the math of the brain demands a toll. Every time you come back to an abandoned task, you have to remember where you left off. You have to reread the last paragraph. You have to overcome the emotional inertia all over again. You have to rebuild the neurochemical momentum from scratch. It is wildly inefficient. You cannot eat a frog by taking one bite, putting it in the fridge, and coming back to it 3 days later. You must eat the whole frog.
And achieving that state of unbroken execution is ultimately a profound test of human character. Tracy quotes the essayist Elbert Hubbard, who defined self-discipline beautifully. He said, "Self-discipline is the ability to make yourself do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not."
Whether you feel like it or not. That is the crux of the entire book. Productivity isn't about feeling inspired. It's about executing when you feel completely uninspired.
And persisting until a task is 100% complete doesn't just clear an item off your to-do list. The act of finishing actually shapes your character. It builds a psychological track record of success. It boosts your self-esteem. You feel incredibly powerful. You feel capable of achieving anything you set your mind to. It practically guarantees your future success because you transform yourself into a person known for one thing: execution.
Okay, let's take a breath and consolidate this entire massive journey. We started at the very bottom, in a state of overwhelming modern paralysis. We learned how to set the table by deciding exactly what we want and putting it on paper, crystallizing it. We applied the harsh mathematics of the 80-20 rule and Dr. Banfield's time perspective to separate the vital few tasks from the trivial many. We used the ABCDE method to isolate our A1 task, our biggest, ugliest frog. We identify the internal choke points holding us back. We slice that terrifying frog up into manageable inch-long pieces using the salami and Swiss cheese methods to hijack our dopamine systems. We shut off our digital masters, created chunks of unbroken time, and we disciplined ourselves to single-handle that task until it was 100% complete. That is the complete blueprint. That is the operating system that shortcuts your way to being highly productive and getting your life back.
It is a flawless system for managing tasks. But if we take everything we have discussed today and connect it to the absolute biggest picture of your life, there is one final, vital, and frankly terrifying concept we need to address before we go. Oh, lay it on us.
We spent this entire deep dive talking about work and productivity in spreadsheets. But consider this perspective shift. What if the ugliest frog you are currently avoiding isn't a project at the office at all? What if your biggest frog is a difficult, heart-wrenching conversation you need to have with your partner? What if it's a boundary you desperately need to set with a family member, or a complete career pivot you've been putting off for a decade because you were terrified of the financial risk?
Wow. Yeah, that hits hard. The frog isn't just an email.
No. The principles of clarity, of manufacturing urgency, of identifying long-term consequences and taking immediate decisive action, they apply to the grand trajectory of your life just as much as they apply to your Tuesday morning to-do list. The fuzzy-mindedness that keeps you procrastinating on an Excel model is the exact same fuzzy-mindedness that keeps you stuck in a relationship you know is over, or a career you absolutely do not love. So the challenge to you, the listener, as we wrap this up, isn't just about managing your time at the office tomorrow. It's infinitely deeper than that. Take a long, honest look at the landscape of your entire life. Look past the trivial tadpoles of your daily routine. Identify your life's biggest frog today. And eat it. Stop standing on the edge of the freezing pool shivering in anticipation. Just jump. Dive in. The water is cold, but the shock is temporary. Start right now.